Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell. I'm film critic and writer, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian. Morning Zoo DJ. Sounds for no reason.
I feel like you would be good at that, actually.
Yeah, other than the waking up. Although I do wake up early now, so.
Yeah, that's true. The waking up is a problem. I remember I used to do movie reviews on morning radio, and they would be waking up when I was going to sleep. So it is a bit rough.
Also, who wants to, join a dead medium like terrestrial radio, Josh?
Yeah, it's all about podcasting. That's where things are at now.
Yeah.
And so in this season of our podcast, we've been talking about the movies of 1996. And this is our season finale, although we have some other stuff coming
little
up.
Little treats for you guys.
Yeah, but this is our traditional final official episode of the season, which is our audience choice poll. We kind of come up with a theme and we offer 3 different options, and we ask you, our listeners, to give us your feedback on the old social medias about which one you'd like to hear us talk about. So in this season, we took a look at 3 movies that were the directorial debuts of well-known actors. That included Billy Bob Thornton's Sling, Steve Buscemi's Trees Lounge, and our winner, which I think we totally could have predicted, Tom Hanks's That Thing You Do. So that's what we're talking about today, That Thing You Do. And it's beloved, it seems like.
I'm okay that it won because I think I would probably have, if given the choice, picked this one last. Like, this is the least likely I would have rewatched. Even though I don't dislike the film, it's just like, it's fine, So, but yeah, a lot of people, it's a feel-good, happy romp, isn't it?
That it is. And it was the first movie, of course, directed and also written by Tom Hanks, who also plays a supporting role in this film. It was a modest hit. It grossed $34.5 million on its budget of $26 million. But as you were just saying, it is, people love it. So even if it wasn't a massive box office success, it's remained this kind of pop culture fixture over the last nearly 25 years since it came out. And it seems like it's maybe even more popular now than it was.
And I wonder, we especially with these years that we look back into the 90s during when video stores and VHSs and then, DVDs were really booming. I wonder if a movie could have that type of resonance today where, something comes out on Netflix and then 20 years later, it still is this like kind of like thing like That Thing You Do or a Love Actually, that it becomes like, oh, we got to watch it every year.
Well, I think possibly. I mean, who knows what Netflix will look like or what streaming services will look like in 20 years. But I think because of the nature of those things where anything that comes out is just available then indefinitely, I absolutely think that could happen. And I think there are instances probably of a movie or a TV series or whatever that comes out on Netflix and not a lot of people watch, but it's still there kind of in the background, and then new people discover it over time. And who knows, maybe 5 years later or something, it suddenly becomes popular, even though it wasn't at first, because it's just as available as it was when it was initially released. But it hasn't really been enough time with those things to really say.
If you get the kids from TikTok to support your movie, then you can, jump it to number 1. That's what we know.
That's true. That's what we're seeing happen right now on Netflix. And in fact, that is what's happening, right? Dave's favorite guy, our producer Dave, his favorite guy, Gaspar Noé, his film Love is suddenly a huge hit on Netflix thanks to TikTok. So
the kids love it.
The kids love it. And that movie came out 5 years ago. So that's sort of, in a way, the kind of thing you're referring to.
Yeah, if there's 2 movies you want to compare, it's That Thing You Do and Gaspar Noé's, erotic filmmaking Love.
Yes, this is quite an erotic drama from Tom Hanks that we're talking about today. So not Love, but That Thing You Do was generally well received. It got an A- from Cinema Score, the audience polling service, and critics liked it, but kind of, as Jason was alluding to, had a similar response that they all thought it was fun and nice, but not particularly great necessarily. It did get 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert. Roger Ebert said, "That Thing You Do is the first film written and directed by Tom Hanks, and not surprisingly, it is as sunny and guileless as many of the characters he's played. The movie may be inconsequential, but in some ways that's a strength. Without hauling in a lot of deep meanings, it remembers with great warmth a time and a place." And that is, of course, the 1960s in Erie, Pennsylvania, and then elsewhere in the sort of garage rock scene, I guess you could call it.
Yes, and I'm a big fan of the garage rock and
You
its
are.
history. But I think one thing I wanted to mention, because you have said it and it was mentioned in the review, the first movie written and directed by Tom Hanks, and just tying it back into our first season, he wrote this script while doing the press tour for Forrest Gump, where he was just doing interview after interview and just getting bored. So he wrote this film while that was all going on.
Man, see, that's why he's Tom Hanks. If I was bored during work, I would not write a future hit film. I would, I don't even know.
You would procrastinate to not get the work done and stay bored.
Exactly. That's true. And then I would screw myself and be stressed out, and there would be no hit film written at all.
That's that thing you do.
That is that thing I do, and I do it very well. Dwayne Berge in The Hollywood Reporter said, "There's no dark side to this story, no devilish snarl about getting no, quote, satisfaction. It's upbeat and utterly predictable in a positive way, but it's also a bit pat and elemental, in large part owing to Hanks's bland band characters. Although Hanks flashes a gentle satiric sensibility and even takes a run at a Richard Lester Hard Day's Night sort of sequence, this rock and roll roadshow is mostly akin tonally and aesthetically to early Ron Howard, namely Happy Days. Full of easy, monkeys-like shines, it's not surprising that first-time director Hanks's major influence seems to be his former TV director and first big movie director. Like Howard, he's winningly middle class in his values and just a tad off-center in his sensibility." So, a lot of damning with faint praise there.
Did Ron Howard direct Happy Days? I know he was Richie Cunningham, but I don't remember.
I'm not sure, but I think he probably did direct some of it because he was angling to become a director at that time. And my guess is he got the chance to direct, like a lot of actors on TV shows will, after a while, get the chance to direct an episode here and there if they want to give it a try. So.
And I didn't mind. I know what he's saying. Like, the characters are all sort of like just one dimensional, like you're the guy who likes jazz and you're the guy who wants to be a rock star type thing. But like, that didn't bother me, but what bothered me is that nothing really ever happened to any of them that you wouldn't think would be the next thing that would happen in the journey.
Yeah, it does feel very inconsequential, as Ebert said. And I think a lot of the characters are even less than one-dimensional. And maybe in part that's sort of intentional. The bass player character played by Ethan Embry, who doesn't even really have a name, and the point of his character is that the bass players are anonymous. But yeah, it's superficial. It's the kind of thing that you can kind of bounce along with, and then afterwards realize they didn't really have much of an effect on me.
Yeah, it's like an episode of House Hunters.
There you go.
Hey, Josh,
yes.
What if they're less than one dimensional? How would you describe them? How would you describe them in dimensions?
As zero dimensional, I guess. I don't know.
Okay, I didn't know if it was like a half a dimension or.
That actually takes talent to sketch out.
They're not zero dimensional. The bass player does play a bass,
That's true.
He is going to the military. We know those two things about him.
That is true. So I don't know, some sort of quantum math term that implies a number between 0 and 1.
He has a love affair with one of the Supreme girl group singers. So,
He did. It just feels like a lot of these characters don't really have anything below the surface personality wise. And those things they're not even necessarily personality traits. They're just like actions. And you don't get a sense of where they come from with these people as people.
I agree.
So finally, Janet Maslin in the New York Times said, forfeiting the chance to make a long and self-serving historical pageant, Tom Hanks has taken something other than the standard movie star route to directorial distinction. Mr. Hanks's debut feature, written and directed with delightful good cheer, is rock and roll nostalgia presented as pure fizz. Lightweight and undemandingly likable, That Thing You Do asks its audience to do nothing but recall the days when the clock radio was a hot appliance and the cast of Bonanza might be spotted signing autographs. That, and go home humming the film's bouncy theme song. And of course, the theme song is really what makes the movie work, I think.
Yeah, and Maslin might want to look back at those words of Hanks forfeiting his opportunity to work on historical epics with all the work he did after this.
That's true, although not as a director, to be fair.
No, but you can also understand, like, you know, look, Tom Hanks started as like kind of a comedy leading man type, right? And then moved into like, you know, America's actor. So like, why wouldn't he want to just go and do something fun and take a break and, you know, just enjoy himself for a little bit?
Right. Well, and I don't think she's saying that it's a bad thing. I think she probably sees it as a good thing, that it's far better for him to make this movie, even if it's a little forgettable, that's just fun and nice, than to make a 3-hour self-serious, you know, slog of an epic, like some other actors maybe would be inclined to do, where he's able to kind of do what he wants. He's such a huge deal. As you say, he's America's actor. He, even in 1996, and it's pretty impressive that in 1996, Tom Hanks was like a huge star who could get whatever he wants. And now 24 years later, Tom Hanks is a huge star who can get whatever he wants. I mean, he's sustained that for a really long time.
Right. And there's that story where he basically went into the studio and told them, like, I'm a huge star. I want, you got to let me do what I want. And they're like, you're right. And then he went and made That Thing You Do. So that is like kind of, you know, an anecdote about the history of this. So yeah, I don't know. I honestly, like, we're going to get into it, but he's the most fun character in it, the Mr. White character that he plays.
Yeah, he's clearly having fun with his role in addition to enjoying the writing and directing of the movie. And I think it's a good use of the clout that he had. As much as I agree with these reviews, and I feel like this movie is kind of surface level and a bit forgettable, I enjoyed it. And I'm sure I enjoyed it more than I would have enjoyed the theoretical long historical epic
that we're making up for the sake of this conversation.
Right. But no, that he could have done, or other potential things that he could have done, that he could have used the position that he was in to kind of pressure a studio into letting him do, that I feel like here he used his power for good. He took advantage of it in the right way.
And also, I mean, what, 25 million, right? 24 million, something like that.
Right.
He wasn't raking him over the coals for all the money that he brought in for his work or anything.
That's true. And I'm sure that also puts a less pressure on him. You know, if he had come in and started out with some $150 million project, he would have been under a lot more pressure to make the money back and to make it into a huge hit. Whereas this can be a modest hit, and that's good enough. So smart guy, that Tom Hanks. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So did you see this back when it came out?
Oh, yeah, of course. We all saw it when it came out. And upon the rewatch, this is another one that the experience is heightened when you're watching it with other people. Those laughs, like those little quick zingers that Steve Zahn throws in. When you're getting the laughs with the entire audience, I feel like it's that feel-good moment that's a little more palatable than when you're just watching it on your couch being like, is there ever going to be any conflict in this movie?
Yeah, you say that, but I had not seen this when it came out. Although I had seen it before rewatching it for this podcast. I saw it maybe like 2 years ago or something, just randomly, as a movie that is so beloved and is so well known that it was one of those movies that I thought, well, I should probably see this. And so I did. And it was fine. It was nice. And I felt pretty much exactly the same way about it now. I never had that experience of watching it in a group of people, but watching it alone at home, it passed the time. It didn't feel like a chore. It was a pleasant experience. So my opinion kind of stayed the same, but it hasn't been a long time. I don't know. My sister Brandy was one of the people who was very gung-ho about us doing this. And I assume when we were younger that she was a big fan of this, but I never remember us watching it together or her, kind of pushing me to watch it. But
and as someone who knows your sister Brandy, little inside baseball here for the audience.
oh yeah, very exciting stuff.
I can see her liking this film. Dave, you're the music guy of the group. What about you? You must have saw it in the theater.
I did. That was the last time I saw it until just a couple days ago when I rewatched it. And it's one of those movies that I think was fun at the time, but I really didn't remember much about. I only saw it the one time, and so it was interesting. Finally, it's not a movie you really expect to rewatch. It's like a movie you kind of just expect to forget about.
Yeah, I think there are people who probably, like, if they had the DVD, they put it on in the background all the time and watch it, not constantly, but often.
Yeah, I feel like this is the kind of thing that's probably like a comfort movie for a lot of people.
Sure.
Maybe not us, but
yeah,
for others, I think it is. So, any other background you want to mention on this one, Jason?
Look, we'll talk about it, but I mean, it was an homage to the Beatles, like you had mentioned, the Richard Lester Hard Day's Night sequence. There's a ton of just different Beatles references throughout, so that's kind of fun, and that's all I want to say, Josh.
All right, well, in that case, we'll come back in a moment and talk about our general thoughts on That Thing You Do. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1996, we've been talking about our audience choice poll winner, Tom Hanks's That Thing You Do, which is nice. It's a nice movie.
It's pleasant. Like the song itself.
I feel like the song itself is better than the movie, is more than just pleasant. It is really like a great pop song. And it has to be, because they play it over and over and over again in this movie. And like I was saying before, this movie would not work if that song wasn't really good and wasn't enjoyable to listen to again and again and again and again.
I think that's fair. But for some credit, we only see the performance of the song twice in full, which I think is good. Once is when they perform it at the Villa Piano's Pizza to win the contest. Oh no, not Villa Piano's, at the college, where they win the talent show for the first time, right? And you that's when Tom Everett Scott speeds up the beat, and we actually see what the song becomes, And then the other time is when they're doing it on national television. And I don't know if you read that, but when he speeds it up, that's kind of an homage to Please Please Me, the Beatles song, which was originally a ballad, and then hit it as a little rock ditty, baby.
Yes. And so we should say, if anyone isn't familiar with this movie, it is the story of the Wonders, who are a one-hit wonder garage band in the 1960s from Erie, Pennsylvania. And one thing that I like about this movie is that the main character is the drummer of the band. And that's not something that you would expect. So Tom Everett Scott plays the drummer guy, along with Johnathon Schaech as the lead singer / songwriter, and Steve Zahn as the guitar player, and Ethan Embry, as I mentioned earlier, as the unnamed bass player, plus Liv Tyler as the girlfriend of Johnathon Schaech's character / eventual love interest for Tom Everett Scott, the drummer, and Tom Hanks as the record executive who helps them on their way to brief stardom with their one hit. So,
and I think, is it Charlize Theron's first film appearance as Tom Everett Scott's initial girlfriend, who leaves him for a dentist, and we find that out in a very quick scene where they say she left him for a dentist.
Yes. I think it's maybe her second or third appearance, but it's certainly one of her earliest roles. And she does her best with it. It's not a huge role, but
no, neither of the women have anything to do. I mean, dude, Liv Tyler has nothing to do. She's just there on the tour, and she really has nothing to do the whole time. And then she has a speech where she's like, I can't believe I wasted all those good kisses on you.
It's like, it's a very cheesy, but kind of, she sells it.
I mean, I guess it's not like there's a limited amount of good kisses she has. She can just replenish the good kisses. She has limited time. She could be using those kisses on someone else during that time. I know. And I do think that's one of the weakest parts of the film is, I mean, we see that they're separating, the lead singer and Liv Tyler Faye. But this kind of budding romance between Faye and Guy, the drummer, like what? I mean, like he makes sure she gets into a car when the crowd is trying to, kind of throw themselves at the band, and there's really not much at all to their relationship. She takes care of her on a plane, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you can see. I think it's clear that they have some sort of connection. I think you can see that, but it definitely goes from like little early hints to all of a sudden full on. But of course, that happens at the very end of the movie.
It's your resolution.
It's just goes from 0 to full, and then it's over. So I agree. I think they have a nice vibe and a nice chemistry, and they could have done more with that, with the connection between Guy and Faye, and it would have been nice. But it does feel a bit abrupt there at the end. But everything about the end feels very abrupt.
So and honestly, I don't mind the abruptness of it, because I think that's kind of a cool story to tell, of like this band that like, took off and then they broke up and then that was it for them. Like that's okay with me. But did you know? Has anyone ever seen? There's like a 148-minute cut of this, like the extended cut, and like there's all these scenes that go into the background of like the relationships and some character development. And I think like, look, I don't want to watch a 2.5-hour version of this film, but I think, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but maybe 10 more minutes of, because normally I like, I'm the other way, like let's slice and dice, baby. But, 10 more minutes of some character stuff and some interaction between some players, so we got a better idea of it. Like, that wouldn't have been a bad thing.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I agree with you. I definitely don't want to see a version of this that's 40 minutes longer. I think that would be dreadful. And I have not seen it. I've read a couple. I think there were a couple of Letterboxd reviews that I saw from people who mentioned having seen the longer cut. And in all cases, they said that it was too long and it didn't add anything. So I'm not sure that it maybe makes things better. I agree with you that maybe a little character development would help. Maybe the character development that longer cut offers isn't good enough. I don't know. I can't say. But there is no version in between the theatrical version and the much longer extended cut where we could see what you're describing. But it might have been nice.
Well, I think like, we're like, you had mentioned faint praise up top there in the first segment. Like, it sounds like we're, coming down on it, but we all kind of feel like we enjoyed the film. There's just absolutely zero conflict in there. And if it didn't say written by Tom Hanks, maybe it doesn't get made. But let's give like some of the positive stuff its due. Like you said, that song is great. It was nominated for an Academy and Golden Globe Award for Best Original Song, losing to Evita, which we have mentioned before.
Yeah, we did mention that before, and that was a very bad choice on the Academy.
This is a better song, yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah,
Tim Rice. But I think what this movie does the best is encapsulate the spirit of what a garage rock band is, and showcasing the I don't even want to say evolution, but like that kind of rocket ship that if you catch fire, and bands did in the 60s. We know that, just kind of how much fun that is. Like, I love the sequence when they first hear their song on the radio and they're running down the street and they're running into the appliance store that Guy's dad owns, and they're dancing around and just running back and forth. Like, that was such a feel-good moment, and I think the way he shot it, like, the emotions really shine through. Like, I love that segment.
Yeah, that segment is great, and that it really does capture that excitement and that glee and the kind of purity of it that those characters have at that moment when they first hear their song on the radio. So, yeah, everything about this, it gives you a sense of fun and excitement. And you don't really notice that lack of conflict, I feel like, until maybe the third act, where they're getting to a point where in a traditional rock biopic, in a movie that was based on actual true events, you would get to the like darkness and the conflict where Tom Hanks's character would really screw them over, which he doesn't really do. He kind of pushes them in certain directions that maybe are not artistically relevant, but he's generally like a good guy who wants them to succeed. But in another kind of movie like this, maybe he would steal all their money or something, or one of the characters would become a drug addict, or instead of just kind of having a mild fight and breaking up Johnathon Schaech and Faye, he would, beat her or something. I don't know that I wanted those things to happen, but
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, tonally it's tough because it is such a delightful little film here, right? So, but I mean, that's the biggest negative for me is the lack of conflict.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think there could be a way to create some higher stakes without having to do all of that super dark music biopic stuff. And I like that it doesn't do that because really, probably there were far more stories in real life of musicians that kind of went like this versus the ones that had all of that intense dark drama. It's just those are the ones that movies get made about because there's a lot of material to build from. So I like that he's trying to tell this different kind of story. I just feel like he doesn't find a way to generate conflict in a different fashion. And I think maybe the love triangle could have been a way to do that it's so underdeveloped, as you were pointing out, that it's almost non-existent. And maybe if there was more to it, it could have raised the stakes in some way, or we could have better understood the individual musical ambitions of some of the characters, whether it was Guy, who's really into jazz and gets excited about meeting his jazz hero, played by Bill Cobb, or whether it was Johnathon Schaech's character. And I felt like it was a little unfair to him because he's portrayed as kind of a jerk because he has this self-regard for his songwriting abilities and he wants them to record his original songs rather than some dumb covers. But I mean, are we not okay? Like, should we not be in favor of artistic integrity? First of all, he wrote That Thing You Do, which is a fucking great song. So he clearly has the talent. Should we not want the band to record more of his songs that he's good at writing?
I'm all for artistic ambition, Josh.
Yeah.
It's I mean, clearly the best example is Styx with Dennis DeYoung versus Styx without Dennis DeYoung. And nobody cares about Styx without Dennis DeYoung. Who wants that? So
yeah, sure. Well, Dennis DeYoung also known for being a jerk, I think, isn't he?
Well, I mean, you said I'm trying to equate these. I don't think he's a jerk as much as possibly a diva who knows what a genius he is, because we all know what a genius Dennis DeYoung is, But no, I think, look, you made some good points. The love triangle is one thing. Like we see them have a bad performance on like a showcase. Like maybe that could have been there. Maybe Mr. White could have been like, hey, even though you guys just were the worst thing I've ever seen, I'm going to sign you and take you on the road. Maybe he would have been like, you guys aren't ready for the big time yet, kid, and we could have seen him work for something. There could have been a rival band maybe that beat him in something. There's a lot of ways to do it without having, drug overdoses and Sid Vicious murdering Nancy there, So.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think maybe either Tom Hanks can't figure out how to do that, or maybe he didn't want to. Maybe his idea was that he wanted a movie that was without really serious conflict and that was just a celebration of nostalgia. And he achieves that. And again, I feel like the movie kind of coasts on that for a long time until you get to the point where it's sort of a stand-in where you expect in another movie of this type, we would have the conflict and it just isn't there. And then just as it sort of arises, the movie ends. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, that didn't bother me, the abruptness, as much as just that it wasn't there the whole time. We talked about Howard Shore on the Crash episode. He also did the music here. That guy, what a year for him in '96, huh?
Yeah, quite versatile. Very different kinds of movies. So,
I mean, those little things go a long way. They're not little things, but the soundtrack of the movie, we know That Thing You Do is like the song that keeps repeating. And in a way, I kind of like that because that was a throwback to me of movies of the 60s and 70s where they picked a song and, every time the mood was right, they played it. I like that stuff. But I do think Howard Shore did a great job of keeping that vibe going when it was, background music and kind of score stuff.
Can I throw a little theory out there, guys?
Sure.
I don't want to give Tom Hanks too much credit here, but I feel in a lot of ways, it's almost like he's trying to capture the feeling of a 60s happy one-hit wonder pop song with there not being any conflict and all that, with it just being just a quick, happy, get in, get out kind of an experience, you know?
Yeah.
I like that theory. I think what's funny is like he clearly has a love and a revere for all this, but you know, as we said, like there's so many Beatles references. The Beatles were the exact opposite of this, right? Like,
Sure.
where, you know, it was obviously we know that they've had hit after hit after hit, but there was the, you know, psychedelic drug taking and the we're bigger than Jesus and the Paul is dead stuff and the, you know, the infighting and Yoko and this and that. Like, so it's kind of interesting because I think you have to mash those two together in the thought process based on what we see on screen.
Yeah, I mean, as much as there are a lot of references and a lot of even explicit references, it's not just cutesy. Like, they say the Beatles a bunch of times in this movie.
Right.
I didn't think of these guys as an analog for the Beatles so much as they're meant to be an analog for all these bands that came along in the wake of the Beatles that kind of tried to ride their coattails in the US and had maybe one or two hits and flamed out. And so they're less the Beatles and they're more the Zombies or something like that.
Yeah, although I think the Zombies had 2 hits, Josh. So I'm gonna.
I just said 1 or 2.
So no, I agree with you. He does reference the Beatles all the time, but yeah, I think probably, you know, back then, just like in the early 70s when every singer songwriter was the new Dylan, right? Every good looking group of young singers was going to be, are they the next Beatles and everything? And obviously there's a reason that there's only one, the Beatles, you know?
Right. And there's references throughout here. I don't think it's meant to be these guys are the fictional version of the Beatles. These are the guys who are being compared to the Beatles, and characters in the movie keep comparing them to the Beatles and to the Rolling Stones at one point as well. So I think that is a good comparison. And Dave, I think you're right about the way that this movie is sort of structured as if it itself is a breezy pop song. And that's one of the reasons why it definitely should not be 40 minutes longer. But going back, Jason, to what you were saying about the music, I think absolutely we should give credit to Howard Shore and of course to Adam Schlesinger for writing That Thing You Do. But also the other songs in this movie, which are not written by Adam Schlesinger. He only wrote that one. Tom Hanks himself actually wrote a bunch of the songs, and they're all very effective kind of pastiches of different styles of music that were around in this era. Like, you can definitely believe that these are songs that would have fit in during this time period and could have been played on the radio. And I think there's instances even of some people who watch this movie and don't realize it's not a true story.
I think, I don't know about that, but I agree with you that music, is there. Like, we have that kind of like aging diva character that Jimmy has a crush on. And then we see him sitting in on her rehearsal and like, she's singing this swooning kind of love song of yesteryear that fits perfectly. I like all that stuff. Like I said, the music heightens this film. I agree with you. And, Adam Schlesinger, who we know sadly died from COVID-19 recently, like this, he was in Fountains of Wayne, good pop group, not my favorite, but I do think he just knocked it out of the park here.
Yeah, he does a fantastic job with that song. And again, the movie doesn't work without that song being great.
Yeah.
But I do think the other songs work for what they are meant to do, that we maybe only just hear the one time. There's also that kind of Perry Como-like singer who was the host of the road show that they take on the various state fairs, and he has some believable material as well. And beyond the music, the production design, the costumes, all of the like craft and technical elements of this movie capture the time period really well.
Yeah, you're right. And going to what Dave was saying, like that kind of feeling of a zippy pop song, like that's what that Tom Hanks character is, this kind of guide of like, all right, we're here, now we're going there, and then we're going to LA, and now you're going to be in a movie, and like super fun things like that. It really worked for me. And Tom Hanks, we know is great. And like I said, he's clearly the most charismatic person in this film, but there's a lot of fun little cameos in there.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, he definitely called in favors and all the people that he's friends with that he wanted to have. We've got Clint Howard is one of the radio DJs. Paul Feig is another radio DJ. Jonathan Demme is the director of the silly beach party movie that they get stuck performing in. And I'm sure there's some others. I'm sure you have the whole list there.
Kevin Pollak, he hosts that big show in Pittsburgh. Bryan Cranston played the astronaut on the kind of Ed Sullivan-like show. Obviously, Rita Wilson, his wife, she did great as Marguerite, that kind of cocktail waitress at the jazz club. And then my favorite, Peter Scolari, hosting the Ed Sullivan type show, his co-star from Bosom Buddies, everybody.
Yeah, I think Peter Scolari has been in a lot of Tom Hanks related projects that he is, it's nice that they're friends from those days. And Tom Hanks went on to become obviously a much, much bigger star, but never forgot about Peter Scolari.
Yeah, it'd be like if George Michael put Andrew Ridgeley on all of his singles or something like that. Wham reference, baby. Wham.
Yeah, well, who's still alive and who's not? So who won out in the end there?
Well, that's a different podcast, Josh.
Yeah. But I agree. Those cameos are fun. And you can tell that is one other element where you can tell that Tom Hanks is just having a good time making this movie. He's putting all the things that he likes and that he has fun with in this movie, whether it's the music or his friends or whatever. And you get that sense. You watch it and you can go along with Tom Hanks's sense of having a good time.
Yeah, there's also a lot of references to Forrest Gump. I don't know if you noticed that, but
I did not, but I would have wanted to tune that out.
Yeah, well, I didn't notice it, but I had read about it. So,
what references are there to Forrest Gump other than the time period?
Captain Geach and the Shrimp Shack Shooters, which was the made-up name for the Boys, the Wonders, when they were in that kind of beach movie. Those are both referencing restaurants in the Beaumont, South Carolina area where he filmed Forrest Gump. Stuff like that, little stuff that no one would need. But like Mattingly and Hayes, the last names of the two members of the band, those were astronauts in Apollo 11, so I guess he's just referencing a lot of his career, I should say.
Yeah, things that he loves space. We know he loves space. He would go on to produce that, what is it called? From the Earth to the Moon.
Yeah,
HBO miniseries. So, yeah, Tom Hanks. And, that's one of the great things about Tom Hanks is that he's so wholesome. What does he love? Pop songs and space.
And Tom Hanks movies.
Yeah, he's like a 5-year-old in this, but in a nice way.
Here's my movie about hamburgers.
Yeah, I'll watch that movie. Tom Hanks, you want to make a movie about hamburgers? I'm there for it.
This is a movie about roller coasters. So,
yeah, those are all nice. There's a roller coaster in this movie. We go to Disneyland. There's another super wholesome
where it's the bass player and a bunch of military guys who just make them do push-ups as kind of a joke, and then they're like, all right, you go to Disneyland with us now. So
yeah.
Hey, Ethan Embry and Liv Tyler, year before Empire Records, this year, That Thing You Do. Again, nice moment in the 90s for these two.
Yeah, two beloved kind of almost cult movies, especially Empire Records has quite
And then Embry went on to Can't Hardly Wait a couple of years later. But I guess that's more legacy stuff, so maybe we should come back and talk about it after we rate it, though. Do we rate it now or later, Josh? I don't remember how the podcast works.
Let's rate it now. Out of
singles?
5 hit singles. How many hit singles do you want to give it?
I give it 3 hit singles. It's like I said, or as Ebert said, inconsequential, but it's just so much fun. I don't know how you could give it less. 3 hit singles.
I agree with everything you just said. 3 hit singles for me, which was the same way I felt about it the first time. Dave, do you want to give it a rating?
I'll go with 3.5. I'm giving it an extra bump just because that song is so damn good.
The song is great. I'm going to give the song 5 hit singles out of 5.
There you go.
It's a fantastic song. So we'll come back, though, and mention a bit about that and more when we talk about the legacy of That Thing You Do. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1996, we've been talking about our Audience Choice Poll winner, Tom Hanks's directorial debut, That Thing You Do. And given that it was Tom Hanks's debut as a writer and director, I guess the first thing to mention in the legacy of this movie is his not particularly distinguished further career as a writer and director. And this movie being relatively popular, you could envision it as the first step in a new phase of Tom Hanks's career where he could have gone on to be a writer and director of other crowd-pleasing movies, but that's really not what happened. He didn't direct another movie until 15 years later.
But really, What a way to come back.
Yeah. Larry Crown, the movie that he made 15 years later, is not particularly good, nor is it remembered by anybody. It is another kind of nice movie where nice people do nice things and nothing really happens. He plays this middle-aged guy who gets laid off and goes back to college. And I barely remembered anything about this movie, but I had seen it. And so I looked up my review that I had written at the time it came out. And I wanted to quote myself. I said that it was so nice and upbeat and eager to please that you suspect that other movies might beat it up on the playground. So
hey, that's good. That's good.
You. Did you see that movie, Jason?
Nope. That was probably one of the movies that would beat it up on the playground. No, that's not good. No, I don't. I mean, I'm not even going to say it slipped through the cracks. I think it was just no interest.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I think that was the way that a lot of people felt about it. It came and went, and basically nobody saw it. But he has worked as a producer, as we mentioned, on some of these HBO series.
I think he's directed some episodes of all that stuff too.
Yeah. And that's been more successful, From the Earth to the Moon and Band of Brothers. And is it The Pacific? Did he work on that one as well?
Well, and he's got that new one on Apple TV that comes out very close to the time of this recording, right?
Yeah, and that's a movie, not a series. And that he wrote but did not direct, called Greyhound. But that's another one of Tom Hanks's interests.
Military.
Like military history. That's more of a dad interest, I guess we could say, than a child interest. But still, I haven't seen that yet, but I'm sure that I will see Greyhound. So yeah, Tom Hanks remains, of course, completely beloved as an actor, and deservedly so. He's a great actor. And he can play complex parts that are more complex, say, than That Thing You Do. But he remains that beloved figure, that kind of America's dad figure. And as much as we may remember, trashed Forrest Gump and even kind of trashed his performance in Forrest Gump. In general, Josh. I think that Tom Hanks is great and is an excellent actor and is versatile and deserves all the success that he's had.
Oh, thank goodness. 4 seasons later, we finally can take this weight off our shoulders, huh? No, I mean, obviously he's Tom Hanks. He's, Jack Nicholson. He's Marlon Brando. He's one of the all-time greats, right? So he's Meryl Streep. So he's any of those people. But I'd like, it would be fun to see him do some more comedic stuff. He's so great as a Saturday Night Live host, and whenever he comes back is a lot of fun. It'd be fun to see him do a little more of this, where it's just like, hey man, go back and just have a good time. But I know, on that sequence we talked about, the Richard Lester sequence where they're kind of scrambling across the map of the United States. They all fall in Cleveland, which was a reference to his days as like a local theater actor there and all the fun he had. So he rose-colored glasses, baby. He might even look back at his time with the coronavirus as maybe that's not a good time, but he was the first celebrity with the coronavirus that we all knew about, I think.
Yes, that is true. Maybe Tom Hanks is going to make some sort of sweet nostalgic movie about the coronavirus. I really hope that does not happen.
Him and Rita Wilson reconnecting in the hospital together or something like that.
Yeah, no. But I mean, I do agree with you that I wouldn't mind seeing him do, and I don't know if he has other projects in the works as a writer and director, but I wouldn't mind seeing him do something else with this kind of nostalgic, fun tone. I feel like Larry Crown, it wasn't nostalgic, but it was going for that same upbeat, positive, nice people doing nice things tone, and it just didn't work because it didn't have. If that was all that this movie had, then it wouldn't work. This movie also has the time period. It also has the music. It also has the production design, all sorts of things that Larry Crown didn't have. Right. So I think if he did another movie like that, it could work, but it would have to have that hook to it like this movie does.
Yeah. And we, I think we talked about the song a lot, but I think we did single out all of those technical elements. This really did feel like you were bird's eye viewing something really kind of fun from the 60s. So as far as the song, we know, pop cultural phenomenon, charted, helped the album chart, covered many times. NSYNC used to play it on tour. Newfound Glory had it on their EP, From the Screen to Your Stereo. So a lot of everyone loves this song, it seems like.
Yeah, it's a great song. And Adam Schlesinger, who wrote that song. As you mentioned before, was in Fountains of Wayne, who I love Fountains of Wayne. I was a huge fan. I saw them in concert multiple times. It was very, very sad when he passed away. And but beyond Fountains of Wayne, which they had one big, they were also kind of like the Wonders in a way, in that they had one big hit, Stacy's Mom, but they put out a number of albums and they were together for a long time. But for Adam Schlesinger, he was more successful doing the kind of thing that he did with this movie, which is creating fake songs or stylistic pastiches for other pop culture projects. He worked on the Josie and the Pussycats movie. He worked on Music and Lyrics, the romantic comedy with Drew Barrymore and Hugh Grant. And he did a ton of work on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which I loved, and wrote dozens and dozens of songs over the course of 4 seasons on that show in multiple musical genres. So that guy was incredibly talented, and is a very sad loss that he's not around anymore.
Agreed, man. I'm not like a super fan, but I mean, it sucks. I mean, as we continue to record in our remote areas, we want this thing to end already. So, and we've lost too many people in general, and obviously super talented people come along with that.
Yes, indeed. So, actor wise, the 4 guys who play the band in this movie, they're all still act, but none of them went on to become big stars. Steve Zahn is probably the most famous of all of them, but even Steve Zahn is not a huge star.
No, but he's had some memorable roles, I always like him in Out of Sight.
Yeah.
But he and Tom Everett Scott both they played the same character, first Zahn and then Tom Everett Scott in the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series. So that's a nice pass off from one to the other. I don't really see Ethan Embry or Johnathon Schaech much anymore, though. So
Ethan Embry looks very different. He aged hard, but he does a lot of TV. I guess he's been on 13 Reasons Why, that Netflix series that's quite popular, which I haven't watched, but he's been on that. And Johnathon Schaech, actually, I recently read an article, and he does work, is just maybe not quite as steadily. And I read a piece where he mentioned, sadly, that he was out of work to the point where he was going to almost lose his house, and he had to call the producers of the DC superhero show Legends of Tomorrow, which he had been on, and basically ask for a favor to get another job on there. So that's kind of sad. He had also spoken out in a kind of Me Too situation about sexual assault that he had experienced on the set of a film that he made when he was younger, and he felt that had kind of harmed his career. So that's a little sad, but a nice end in that he got the work that he needed, and somebody helped him out, and he deserves it. I mean, they're all solid actors. None of them, they don't have the superstar making quality in this movie, but I think that's probably part of the point, is that this is meant to be one of those anonymous bands, one of the bands that came and went, and these guys didn't have it the way that the Beatles did, and those actors portray the characters exactly the way that they should.
Yeah, Tom Everett Scott, the husband on I'm Sorry, Andrea Savage's show, which is a really funny show. So I would recommend that if anyone wants to watch something that any of these guys are doing currently. But the other thing is, I think 3 of the 4 of them reunited in 2017 on the Goddamn Comedy Jam, which is a comedy show that I actually did once.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you know that show?
Is like a live comedy show?
Yeah, it's Josh Adam Meyers, a very funny comedian out of LA. And what happens is you go up, you do your set, and he's got a live band behind him. And then when you're done with your set, you sing a rock and roll song with his live band. And Bill Burr became a huge fan of it, and kind of maybe toured with them or kind of helped them get some places. But we did it out here in Vegas, and it was really fun. You really do feel like a rock star doing that. And I'm not a good singer, but I did get to sing some Guns N' Roses with the rest of the crew. And it was Steve Byrne and Amazing Jonathan who were the headliners on ours. But I think they were filming for Comedy Central, and 3 of the members were in the audience. Maybe Steve Zahn wasn't, but they convinced him to come up and do that thing you do with the band. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is a cool thing. They also recently reunited for one of these Zoom reunions that various celebrities have been doing recently, in part in tribute to Adam Schlesinger after he passed away, and raised some money for charity. So that's a nice thing as well. It's nice that maybe they're all still friends and they had a nice experience making the movie and they stay in touch. That's always And another nice thing about this nice movie that Tom Hanks would get people together and they would become friends.
And that pretty much sums it up for me, Josh.
I agree. The only other legacy thing we kind of alluded to, this was one of Charlize Theron's earliest roles. And of course, she went on to be a much, much bigger star than any of those four guys.
And we love her.
Yes, we do. I mean, she's fine in this movie. She doesn't make much of an impression, but I think I was not that long ago on the Piecing It Together podcast talking about the decade, the best of the decade. And she was my pick for the best performer of the 2010s in her entire body of work. I think she's fantastic. So,
yeah.
So that'll do it then. That is that thing you do. And that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can follow us on social media.
Yeah, we're on social media. And you know what? We've upped the activity. I like that. We're engaging and we like the repartee with our fans and friends and listeners. So thank you, guys and ladies. And where you can find us is awesomemovieyear.com. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, and Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. I'm at Jason Harris Comedy on Facebook and Instagram. J Harris Comedy on Twitter. Go for jason.com. Just an abysmal wreck of a website.
And yeah, we it's good to mention that we had a lot of good, strong feedback on the audience poll for this. Of course, it doesn't work unless we get feedback, so we very much appreciate that from people. You can find me at joshbellhateseverything.com, at joshbellhateseverything on Facebook, and at Signal Bleed on Twitter. And of course, you can listen to our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
You can check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to this great podcast. And also, I did this once before, way back on the Crumb episode. But guys, I got to give a quick plug to Wax Trax Records, my family's record store. If you like the kind of music in this movie, you should go to Wax Trax. You'd probably find a 45 of this song, even most likely. If it exists, it's probably there.
I love that plug, man. That's fantastic, Dave.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the Wax Trax movie/reality show.
I would happily write at least a web series to take place there.
So this is the finale, but we have a little bit more. What are we doing in our next episode?
Yeah, we're going to come back. We'll do the epilogue, and then I think we'll have some bonus treats after that coming too. But next episode, we're gonna talk about all the things we didn't cover that we talked about covering. So if you like learning about things that you would have liked better, this is the one for you.
So tune in for that next time, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.